Here I have the athlete performing a maximal sprint from the side view. What you'll see in this video is that the athlete is unable to create the necessary knee drive to promote horizontal force. And what you'll see, if I press play, is that this lack of knee drive is causing the athlete to land his front leg just in front of the center of mass. So if I draw a line here, then you can clearly see that his front leg is slightly placed in front of the center of mass, and this is promoting braking forces, which will obviously decrease his running capability. I've now set up a mobility hurdle exercise which will enable the athlete to step over 4 hurdles, and from here we can see what the movement strategies he's using throughout this exercise. As you can see here, as he elevates his left leg over the hurdle, he fails to achieve full triple extension in his standing leg. So this could be a further indicator that he has a lack of mobility in the hip extensors. My alternative hypothesis is that he has a lack of glute activation in the standing leg whilst he lifts his opposite leg into the air. And therefore this enforces him to choose a compensatory movement pattern in the lumbar spine. My alternative hypothesis is that simply he has a lack of activation in the hip flexor itself. So whilst he elevates his knee, his hip flexors do not switch on effectively, and therefore he has to choose a compensatory movement pattern in order to get the foot over the hurdle.
Here I have an athlete performing a maximal sprint. This athlete has a skill issue as his old movement pattern doesn't allow him to create the necessary knee drive, and he also fails to recover the back foot, the heel, close to the hips.
I've now asked the athlete to perform an exercise which will encourage him to go through these small hurdles with a higher knee. Not only will this encourage the athlete to perform a higher knee drive during the maximal sprint performed later in the session, but this will also promote downward force as he pushes off the floor. In preparation for the sprint at the end of the session, I've now asked the athlete to perform an exercise which will encourage him to bring the heel closer to the hips. This exercise will also encourage him to perform a higher knee drive.
So if we compare the first sprint here on the left in comparison to the last sprint here on the right, we can clearly see that there's a higher knee drive on the right in comparison to the left.
In this video you will see an athlete performing an agility exercise where he's going to accelerate over 10 meters as fast as he can and decelerate into a complete stop. However, as you can see, as he approaches the 10-meter line, he's unable to maintain an upright position due to the lack of eccentric strength in his hamstrings. So if I play that back in real time, that will give you a better understanding how fast he has to slow down and how much he compensates. I've now set up a bilateral plyometric exercise. As you can see here, as the athlete jumps over the first hurdle, his pelvis drops below the recommended quarter squat, which we like to see during plyometric exercises. You can see here he goes more into a half squat. My first hypothesis is that he simply lacks eccentric strength in his hamstrings, and he also lacks strength in the stretch shortening cycle. My alternative hypothesis could be that he just simply lacks stiffness in his ankle and knee joints. So if I play that back into real time, you'll get a better understanding how you can see his pelvic collapses when he lands. Here we see an agility exercise with the athlete turning 90 degrees around the cone at full speed. The athlete's accelerating and decelerating around the cone. However, he's adopting an old movement strategy by not using his outside foot to push off and to create the necessary horizontal forces needed to change direction quickly. I've set up an agility exercise which involves the athlete having to zigzag around 4 cones. As you can see, again, he's adopting his old movement strategy. He plants his inside foot just inside the cone to create the horizontal forces. Again, on the third cone you can see he uses his inside step to push off. And ideally what we'd like to see is the athlete use his outside leg to create the horizontal forces whilst accelerating around the cone.